Most things in life have logical explanations. Flickering lights, creaky floors, that eerie feeling of being watched. Is just your brain messing with you, right? Well, but sometimes reality twists into something far more creepily terrifying. A shadow moves where no one stands. A face appears in a reflection, where no face should be. A camera captures something that shouldn't exist, yet there it is, staring back. These aren't just ghost stories whispered around a campfire. These are real encounters, things people have seen, filmed, and still can't explain. From unsettling figures lurking in the dark to creatures that defy nature itself, here are 15 bone-chilling moments where ordinary people came face to face with pure horror, and trust us, you won't be able to look away. Number 15, the red-eyed creature in the woods. A rainy night, a lone camper, and two glowing red eyes watching from the trees. It sounds like the setup to a horror movie, but for Reddit user Zombie Paranormal, it was terrifyingly real. He was documenting his solo camping trip when his camera picked up something in the distance. Two burning red eyes locked onto him from the darkness. They didn't flicker like animal eyes catching the light. They didn't move. They just stared. And then they vanished. Heart pounding, he stepped out of his tent, gripping his flashlight with trembling hands. He swept the beam across the tree line, expecting to see something. Footsteps, rustling branches, anything. But the forest was silent. No broken twigs, no shifting shadows. Just an eerie, unnatural stillness. When he uploaded the footage, the internet exploded with theories. Some swore it was a Wendigo. Others said it was something demonic. But one comment sent a shiver down his spine. If you see red eyes in the dark, it's already too late. That was all he needed to hear. He packed up and left before sunrise. Some encounters aren't meant to be questioned. Number 14. The Winged Demon of the Cliff. The wind howled as a lone hiker stood atop a high cliff, the jagged rocks below swallowed by shadow. But something else pricked at his senses, a feeling that he was being watched. He raised his camera, scanning the landscape. At first, it was just a dark shape perched on the rocks, barely distinguishable. But as he zoomed in, his stomach dropped. It wasn't a shadow. It was a thing. Massive, leathery wings folded tight against its hunched body. Its arms. If that's what they were, stretched unnaturally long, its joints twisted at angles that shouldn't be possible. The moment he focused on it, its head snapped up. It knew. Then it moved. Not walking, not flying, just shifting. The sheer wrongness of it sent terror crashing through his chest. He stumbled backward, nearly dropping his camera. Was it about to leap? To chase? He didn't stay to find out. He ran. But what if it followed? Number 13. The unknown figure in the incinerator basement. The Lillo incinerator in Kentucky has a history of death. In 1966, a young woman was found strangled inside. Since then, it has been the subject of whispers, warnings, and things best left alone. YouTuber KLW Herc wasn't convinced. He wanted proof. So he went inside. The deeper he ventured into the decaying building, the stronger the feeling of being watched became. His flashlight flickered, and his camera glitched. The silence pressed against him, thick and suffocating. And then, he saw it. A hunched figure, hidden in the dark, watching. At first he thought it was graffiti, just a smear of darkness on the wall. But then, it moved. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to run, and he did. He didn't look back, didn't try to understand. He just ran. And the thing? It didn't chase him. It didn't have to, because it already knew he'd be back. If there's one lesson to take from this, well, don't go looking for trouble. Number 12. The Veiled Watcher. Security cameras catch a lot of weird things at night. Stray cats, raccoons, the occasional late-night jogger. But at 3 a.m., this footage captured something else, something that shouldn't have been there. A lone figure glided down an empty street. It wasn't walking. It wasn't even running. It was floating. Wrapped in flowing white, its face obscured in deep shadow, it drifted along the pavement like it wasn't touching the ground at all. Then it stopped. Slowly, it turned its head toward the camera. No eyes, just darkness. And then, it raised a hand. Long, skeletal. Fingers too thin to belong to anything human. The camera flickered. The figure twitched. And then, static. When the feed returned, it was gone. No footprints. No trace it had ever been there. Just silence. Some say it was a spirit, caught between realms. Others believe it was something worse, something that didn't want to be seen. But if that's true, if it really didn't want to be noticed, then why did it reach for the camera? And the real question, where did it go? Number 11, the Skinwalker transformation. The streets of Punjab were unusually quiet that night. Too quiet. A group of kids played near the edge of a dimly lit alley, their laughter echoing in the still air. Everything seemed normal, until one of them stopped. His body twitched, then convulsed. His limbs jerked unnaturally like something was breaking inside him. His friends stepped back, laughter dying on their lips. At first, they thought he was playing around, until his limbs started to shrink. His spine bent in ways no human should bend. His face elongated, stretching into something inhuman. And then, he was gone. In his place, where the boy once stood, a dog remained, panting, shaking itself like nothing had happened. Then, just as casually, it trotted into the dark. The kids screamed. The footage went viral. Some called it proof of skinwalkers, beings that disguise themselves as humans before shedding their stolen skin at night. Others dismissed it as a hoax. But those who know the old stories whisper something far more terrifying and creepy. Number 10, the Rooftop Watcher. She never would have looked up if not for the noise, a faint scraping, like claws against stone. At first, she brushed it off as the wind, but something about it felt deliberate. When her eyes finally landed on the rooftop, she froze. A thin, wiry creature perched at the edge, its body barely covered in sparse, brittle feathers. Its limbs were long and skeletal, but its eyes, huge, glossy, and unblinking, were the worst part. They weren't just looking at her. They were locked onto her. Her chest tightened, her body refusing to move. For an agonizing moment, they stared at each other, caught in a silent standoff. Then, in the blink of an eye, it was gone. No sound, no feathers left behind, no sign that it had ever been there. But she knew. Even now, she swears she can still feel it, watching from the dark. Number 9, the Balcony Visitor. The night was still, the city buzzing faintly below as the man stepped onto his balcony. The air was cool, a welcome escape from his restless thoughts. But as he leaned against the railing, something shifted nearby. At first, his tired mind assumed it was just a shadow. Then, he saw it. A figure stood just feet away, wrapped in tattered cloth, swaying ever so slightly. At first, he thought it was a person, until he saw the face. Or rather, the lack of one. The features were warped, stretched, hollow-eyed, like melted flesh reshaped into something almost, but not quite, human. A deep chill spread through his chest. He couldn't move. Neither did it. They remained locked in place until suddenly, it was gone. No sound, no motion, just an empty balcony. Locals warned of spirits that wander, but he knew better. He knew what he saw. Number 8, the shadowy lurker. It started as a normal night, October 2015. A man sat in his dimly lit living room, mindlessly scrolling through his phone. But then an odd sensation crept over him, the feeling of being watched. His breath stilled. Slowly, he turned toward the window. Beyond the glass, something stood. It was too tall, its limbs too long, its eyes glowing softly. For a second, he convinced himself it was just a trick of the light. Then it tilted its head. His stomach dropped. With shaking hands, he reached for his phone, desperate to capture proof. The moment he hit record, it moved. Not stepping back, not running, just fading, dissolving into the dark like it had never been there. His footage was blurry, indistinct. People dismissed it, but he knew better. Even now, some nights, he still feels it, still watching. Number 7. The roadside encounter. The road stretched endlessly ahead, the night air cool as he pedaled through the empty countryside. It was quiet, almost too quiet. Then his headlight caught movement, something darting across the road, fast, too fast. He braked hard, his breath catching. It wasn't a deer, wasn't a dog. It moved on all fours, but not like any animal he had ever seen. Its limbs were too long, too twisted. Its head snapped toward him, its pale body a blur as it vanished into the brush. Frozen, he listened. The trees swayed, the wind whispered, but there were no footsteps, no signs of movement, nothing. Locals whispered about skinwalkers, and others murmured about aliens. He didn't care what it was. He just pedaled as fast as he could, because deep down he knew it saw him. And worse, it wasn't alone. Number 6. The cave humanoid. Cave exploring at night? Bad idea. He knew that. But curiosity got the better of him. Flashlight flickering, he stepped deeper into the tunnels, the damp air thick and heavy. His footsteps echoed, followed by the distant drip of water. Then another sound. Not an echo, not water. Breathing. A low, raspy inhale that wasn't his. His light trembled as he swept the beam across the cave walls. And then he saw it. A pale figure, crouched, staring. Its skin stretched too tight, ribs jutting out, eyes sunken black pits. It didn't blink, didn't move. Then it lunged. Its mouth gaped unnaturally wide, a guttural growl tearing from its throat. The explorer stumbled back, heart slamming against his ribs. He turned and ran, the echoes of skittering movement chasing him through the darkness. He made it out, barely. Number 5. The silent stalker on a live cam. It's 3 a.m., and Reddit user Insect8448 is watching a live stream of a remote forest. Because, you know, nothing ever goes wrong in the woods at night, right? Then something moves. At first, it's just a shadow in the background. Then it steps forward. But it's not an animal. It's human-shaped, but wrong. Its limbs move in stiff, unnatural jerks, like a puppet controlled by invisible strings. It doesn't walk, it twitches. Then it stops, completely still, facing the camera, watching. And then it's gone. Not walking away, not turning, just gone. The internet explodes. Some call it a cryptid. Others think it's a glitch. But then, one comment sends chills down everyone's spine. It wasn't glitching, it was adjusting. It knew it was being watched. And if it knew it was being watched, that means it knew who was watching. All right, now, let's move to number 4. The Watcher in Blackbird Forest. Blackbird Forest in Delaware has long been a place of whispered legends. Phantom figures, eerie lights, things that watch from the shadows. But Reddit user Coldgate11 didn't expect to capture one of them on camera. While filming his camping trip, his lens swept past a wooden box, and that's when he saw it. A shadowy figure with glowing eyes staring directly at him. It wasn't just lingering, it was watching. Then, the second it realized it had been spotted, it darted out of sight. The movement was wrong, too fast, too precise. Some say it was a skinwalker, others claim it was an unknown cryptid. But here's the part that makes your stomach drop. When he went back to check, no tracks, No broken branches, no sign that anything had ever been there. Just an empty, silent forest, and the overwhelming, gut-wrenching feeling that something still was. Number 3. The hidden crawler in a camping photo. Reddit user Luminosity was scrolling through camping photos when he noticed something that shouldn't be there. The picture seemed normal, just his friends posing for a late-night shot. But when he brightened the image, everything changed. A twisted, bone-pale figure was crouched in the background, half hidden in the darkness. Its limbs were too long, its posture unnatural, and its face contorted into something barely human. The worst part? It looked like it had been crawling toward them, silent, unseen. None of them had noticed anything that night. No footsteps, no rustling, not even a breath of movement. The internet was quick to suggest it was a crawler, one of those nightmarish humanoid creatures rumored to stalk the wilderness. Optical illusion? Maybe. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And now, Luminosity can't shake the feeling that whatever was in that photo had been watching them the whole time. Number 2. The man in the woods. YouTuber Sky from Swamp Valley wanted a night of peace in the woods. What he got was a waking nightmare. At first it was just a feeling, the unsettling sensation of being watched. Then movement in the trees. And finally, a man. Not another camper, not a lost hiker, just a man standing there, staring. Sky tries to shake it off, muttering into the camera, "I don't want to sound like a big pansy, but this is really freaking me out." He picks up his pace. So does the man. Then it happens. The man reappears, holding a gas can and a lit torch. The chase begins. Sky's breathing turns ragged as he sprints for his life, his camera catching glimpses of flames behind him. He barely escapes. But the real horror? The police found no trace of the man. No tracks, no evidence, nothing. So, who was he? Well, only God knows for sure. Number 1. The unseen presence in an abandoned farmhouse. YouTuber. The Flex Tapes thought he was just spending another night exploring an abandoned farmhouse until something decided to join him. The place was falling apart, the air thick with decay. He set up his camera, ready to settle in for the night. And then, footsteps. Slow, heavy, climbing the stairs. His breath catches as he reaches for his flashlight. But before he can react, his camera captures something horrifying. A figure in the doorway, just standing there. No movement, no breath. Just a silhouette of pure darkness. Panic sets in. He bolts from the house, not looking back. The next day, he checks the footage, and here's where it gets worse. The figure? It wasn't there. But the footsteps? The presence? Those were very, very real. A word of advice. If you ever get the urge to explore an abandoned place, do your research first. Some places have histories that are better left undisturbed. If you find this video interesting, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon in the next one.